Hi, everybody. My name is Lee Wind. I am the Chief Content Officer for the Independent Book Publishers Association. And one of the cool projects that we run is We Are Stronger Than Censorship. And I want to welcome you to this panel of the Every Library Institute's sort of acknowledgement of Banned Books Week 2025. This is the Publishing in the Storm panel. And we are really fortunate because we have two incredible independent publishers with us for this conversation. We have Cheryl Willis Hudson and Wade Hudson from Just Us Books, and we have Jason Lowe from Lee and Lowe. And I'm going to ask our panelists to introduce their companies and say hi. So Cheryl and Wade, can you start, please?
Well, we are delighted to be here, stronger than ever, and really supportive of Banned Book Week and everything that the Independent Book Publishers Association is doing to help us in this effort. I am Cheryl Willis Hudson, part owner and founder of Just Us Books with my husband Wade Hudson, who is the president and CEO. And I feel like I'm in church now. I'm gonna introduce the pastor or something. But we we started our company, Just Us Books, in 1988. Wade and I are creatives. Wade is a writer and has a strong background in public relations and public information. And I started an independent career some 50 years ago as a textbook art editor for a company in Boston. We really got into this business, and it has become a business, and it is a passion for us, Just Us Books. As creatives, we started out putting stories together ourselves. Wade was the writer, I was the graphic designer, concept person, and trying to really make a difference, a lot based on my publishing background in textbooks, where we saw and experienced that textbooks did not include people who looked like us. This was in the early 70s, late 60s, when some changes started, but that was in the textbook industry. Let's just leap to 1987, when we self-published a book called the Alphabet's ABC book, which is a concept book based on the alphabet. A is for Africa, B is for baby, brown baby, C is for cornrows, and they were based on Afrocentric principles. And we thought was a great idea. We submitted it to all of the publishers. We were not publishers at that time. We were looking at ourselves as creatives, but we were rejected numerous times by everybody in Boston, New York, Philadelphia, wherever there were publishing companies. So we decided to publish it ourselves. That book concept was really successful, flew off the shelves without any strong distribution anywhere in the traditional marketplace. And we felt, oh, we've got something here. There are other people who want to see Black people, Black kids, kids of color in trade books as well as textbooks. So that was really the genesis of Just Us Books. And together, we really created the Afrobets kids that had diversity within the Black community. Some had curly hair, some had kinky hair, some had light skin, somebody had freckles, some went to private school, So there were basically 6 characters that kind of represented a spectrum, a diversity within the Black community, and they were branded as our first series of books. And following that, we really expanded and Wade can share more of this probably later in terms of questions that you might have, but into concept books, chapter books, books for middle readers, anthologies. And our theme really is that good books make a difference. And our response was, we need to have books in the marketplace that are accessible, that are available to parents everywhere that look like us and parents who don't look like us. That there needs to be diversity to reflect the society that we are in. So we need to demonstrate that. And Just Us Books was born in 1988. And there's a lot more history, but the rest has been good. been good.
That's amazing. And thank you, Cheryl. Wade, just off the top of your head, do you know like how many books, even if it's a round number, that Just Us Books has published since you
Yeah,
launched?
we've done close to 300, but we've also partnered with other major publishers as well. Scholastic, for example, I think we did about 16 projects with them. Also with Penguin Random House. Um, and we also have another imprint called Marimba Books. And that imprint focuses on books that represent the diversity. So it's not just a black, totally black focus, which is what Just Us Books was in the beginning. And we also established another imprint called Sankofa, because when we started Just Us Books, there were so many black authors or black creatives who came to us whose books were out of print, and they wanted to bring those books back in print. And so we started Sankofa. And so those are the three imprints: Just Us Books, Marimba, and Sankofa.
That's really cool. Thank you. Jason, can you tell us a little bit about how Lee and Low got started?
Sure. Okay. Well, firstly, thanks for having me here, participating in this great panel. So timely, so topical. Um, Lee and Low Books was founded in 1991. And really, the impetus behind this was to do books about everyone and for everyone. Um, when I was growing up, personally, I never saw anyone who looked like me in a picture book, and actually, that's not true. The only one that was around was, the one with the 4 or 5 Chinese brothers, and
Right.
Oh,
that
it's
was,
so
and
horrible.
yes, it's
Mm.
really bad. And it was one of those books that one tried to distance oneself from. Especially, I was growing up as one of the few Asian kids in a pretty white suburban elementary school. So that was the last thing that you wanted to do, was have yourself associated with something, a book like that. And so when Lee and Low started to ramp up, well, one of the first books that we published was Baseball Saved Us, and it takes place in a Japanese incarceration camp during World War II, which is when the United States government was actively essentially putting Japanese Americans in jail because they suspected that they would be collaborating with the enemy at the time, which proved completely false. And later, the U.S. government ended up apologizing for this because it was basically unconstitutional and unjust. But reason I mentioned Baseball Saved Us is because it really set the bar for the kinds of books that could be told in a picture book format. A lot of what we do at Lee and Low is really plug holes in a lot of American history, a lot of history that has been omitted or essentially been skipped over. All of us have had, or at least our descendants have had, a huge hand in rolling up their sleeves and founding and building this country, and we, want to be part of, the people who contributed to the building of the United States, but also be able to document that in books that will last for generations. One thing that we found, though, being that like my father, Thomas Low, and co-founder Philip Lee, they essentially were publishing newbies. They had never worked in publishing, and they just had this idea for publishing multicultural books. And so what they found was, or what we found was, that publishing books takes a long time. It's not one of these mediums that's really quick and fast. I mean, a picture book can take years to do. And so, as we were chugging along, we were sort of thinking to ourselves, really from a mathematical point of view, is that publishing is also kind of a numbers game, because you kind of live and die off the backlist, right? And so over those years, we ended up acquiring different small publishers that essentially aligned with what we were trying to do as a publisher. So some of those presses were Shen's Books, Children's Book Press, Cinco Puntos Press, really great publishers, and I think what that did was it made sure that those books stayed available, for kids to access. And we essentially would keep those legacies alive by keeping them around, keeping them accessible. So I think that kind of was an important contribution that we feel proud of.
Jason, are those
the other,
kept as sort of separate imprints now? Or
yes, they are. Yeah, they are. So basically, those names will live on, as well as the books themselves. And the other thing that like I felt was needed to be done was essentially get a set of numbers, that we could basically see, that had to do with kind of who was staffing the companies that were involved in publishing, like publishing themselves, trade reviewers, university presses, literary agents, things like that. And so we established the diversity baseline survey, essentially, which has become the benchmark for measuring and inclusive hiring in the industry. And it's been something that we've done 3 times already since it came out in 2015. And it does show, a clear through line that the industry is getting more diverse from a staff point of view, which I think is always something that was suspected of, that we may have had a diversity or inclusion problem in the industry, but never had any data to support that suspicion. So I'm quite proud of sort of having started that as well. Yeah.
that's great. And Jason, Lee and Low also does a sort of, is it Lee and Low or is it the Center for Cooperative?
Oh, they do that.
Education?
They also, the Center for Cooperative Children's Book Center. Yeah, the Cooperative Children's Book Center. Yeah,
Thank you.
CCBC.
The acronyms always mess me up, but
Yeah.
but they do a data on the diversity within children's books and the creators, and that is not getting that much better.
No, well, that actually was the inspiration for the survey that we ended up doing, because I mean, since I started in children's books, I always looked at that data or to sort of see, how many books were coming out that had diverse content in it. And I was like, oh, wouldn't it be great to have a set of data that people looked at year in and year out? And that was sort of my inspiration for that. CCBC's data was always something that I was checking our progress against to see if we were making a dent in the universe, basically. Yeah.
And I do think that making publishing more diverse, I mean, I know I'm a white guy, but like I'm gay and I'm Jewish,
Yeah.
and I try to be an ally to everybody else, to the Black community, to other communities of color, to disabled people, to women, like to the immigrant community. Like I definitely feel like our role is to be allies to each other, and that's how we will create progress overall. Yeah. But I do feel like the more people that have a stake in underrepresented voices being heard in the larger scheme of literature and children's literature, the more diversity we'll end up seeing in the books. Yeah. Like I think those are connected.
Yeah, I think it's important to share that Lee and Low started as Jason said in 1991. Just Us Books started in 1988. We supported each other. We would encourage each other and lift each other up at various conferences. So we did recognize the importance of community as we try to make a dent in this difficult publishing industry. And Tom and Philip were good friends, and I would say Jason is as well. And again, we shared information and supported each other. So, because often we would be the only independent publishers at many of these conferences for a long time.
Yeah. And yeah, I echo what Wade just said, as well as kind of back to what you said, Lee, about being an ally too, is that, time that I've been in publishing and doing the books that we do, I always noticed that there was this connection, between, what the books were about, the themes, the universal themes were very much aligned with like what people wanted, generally speaking, for their lives, and despite what people look like, was always that consistent sort of thought, that want, that desire, that people had, no matter what they looked like. So for me, that was always the connecting thread, and I think that we live in a world that tries to put people in a box, for most of the time. And I would be one of these people who is very much a proponent of working together to unify, under a lot of the same causes,
Absolutely.
because we do want a lot of the same things, and people just need to be reminded of that.
Absolutely.
I love that. Yeah. Um, I was, so we called this Publishing in the Storm because there is a bit of a storm happening. Oh, we're getting joined by Antonio from Levine Querido. So let's
Great.
welcome Antonio here.
Welcome.
Absolutely. Great.
Hi, Antonio. Welcome. We're glad you can join us. And we are recording, so we don't have a live audience, but we're so glad you're here. Hi.
Hi there. I'm so sorry to be
Hello,
late.
Antonio.
So-
How you doing?
Hiya.
Jump in and give us in 1 or 2 minutes the sort of like the origin story for Levine Querido and your mission.
Well, Arthur founded Living Querido in 2019, and we've been publishing children's books ever since then. He has a long history of working in the industry and being an advocate for diversity. He had his eponymous imprint at Scholastic for 23 years, I believe. And even then, he was still very much an advocate for inclusive books, multicultural books, international books, books in translation. And so it was just a natural and sort of a natural move to go ahead and launch Living Querido independently. So yeah, that's LQ, and that's the mission. We are on a mission to uplift underrepresented voices, lift and create more inclusive publishing, from the production to the design to the editorial to everything, every piece of it.
And what are your imprints currently?
Okay, so there's a couple. There's Levine Querido, which is our just main imprint. And then there's Emmanuel, that we have M. Querido, which is our books in translation. And those are books from around the globe that are published in translation. And then we have Ediciones LQ, which are books that are published in Spanish. And these are LQ books that are now being translated into Spanish for Spanish speakers in the US market and sometimes Spanish speaking markets abroad. And then we just recently launched Relit, which is an imprint that is taking a look at some books that maybe didn't get their fair shot a couple, before, and now they're gone out of print, and we want to sort of revive them and put them back into the marketplace.
That's really interesting because Lee and Lo, Wade and Cheryl were telling us that they have, is it Sankofa?
Sankofa, yes.
Which means go back and
fetch
it.
it. Yeah.
So it's bringing back some of those old titles. That's based on an Akan proverb, and the Sankofa bird who goes back and catches the egg and brings it forward into the future so that you can benefit from past experiences into the future. So it's wonderful that we're in alignment in terms of what our focus is, which is to be inclusive, as Antonio said, not divisive or divisive, which seems unfortunately to be trending now in terms of the calls of government and some areas.
Trending like an avalanche.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I heard Pete Buttigieg say it really eloquently. He was saying the opposite of diversity is homogeneity, everybody the same.
Yeah.
And the opposite of equity is things are unfair. And
right.
the opposite of inclusion, if people are excluded, how do we possibly get to the place where people are advocating for everybody to be the same, for people to be excluded, and for things to be unfair? Like
Yeah.
it was so articulate and so smart. But that is a bit of the storm that all of us are in the middle of, and I count myself in, because outside of my job for IBPA, which is the Independent Book Publishers Association, I am an author. I did full disclosure, I did have a picture book published by Levine Querido, and I have books with 5 other independent publishers. So authors and other creatives, and including Wade and Cheryl, and publishers, which are all 3 of you, everybody is dealing with this sort of explosion of book banning. And I wanted us to go a little bit and to talk about, like, as a publisher, how are you seeing the impact of this sort of like chilling effect and this giant orchestrated effort to suppress assault to suppress the stories that are basically your very mission. And Antonio, let's start with you. What are you seeing as the sort of like the impact as a publisher?
Well, I think the thing that I find, I think there's a couple of impacts. There's definitely soft censorship, which is, you start to see,
They just don't bring it in in the first place.
yeah, they just don't bring it in the first place. Educators, booksellers, librarians, they're afraid of being challenged at their place of work. This is their livelihood. This is how they make their money. There's just fear. And so they're afraid of being labeled something, a groomer, just all kinds of negative things that they could be labeled, or they could be doxxed by very by groups that are coming after this kind of mission and thinking. So I think that's the biggest thing, is the soft censorship and the self-censorship, and the just general fear that comes from that. And obviously the impacts are great, because if fewer people are buying our books, and there are fewer, and there are fewer places where folks can discover underrepresented and inclusive voices.
Thanks. Yeah, it's interesting you said that. It's the soft censorship of the books not being attained, but it's also the danger of self-censorship, where on both creative side and publisher side, and you need to stand up against that. Cheryl and Wade, I'm curious, as creatives yourself and as publishers, how are you seeing the impact of all this book banning?
Well, from a company standpoint, it has had an impact on our sales. We're selling fewer books because of book bans. And as authors, we are getting, obviously our books are not selling like they used to before this assault, but also we're not getting invitations to go to schools to speak. In fact, Cheryl can talk about this, but she's had 2 school visits actually canceled over the last year. And we speak to a lot of other authors and illustrators who are friends, and they are encountering the same kind of thing. And I think the other thing that's happening is, I think mostly major publishers are aware that some of the themes or the topics that they may acquire would be challenged. I think that they're thinking twice about what they acquire. Now, they're not going to say that. They're not going to say that. But, they're watching their bottom line too,
Well, and when you're owned by a corporation and you're only, and you have your financial obligation is the first priority. Things are different than if you're a mission-driven publisher, like all 3
absolutely,
of you.
like we are. Absolutely.
Which is why I want to talk with you.
Um,
Cheryl,
could
did they
I,
give
could I,
yeah,
oh,
please.
I'm sorry, go ahead. I was just going to Yeah, I was just going to build off something that Wade mentioned, about that big publishers, are starting to think twice about acquiring diverse titles. And actually, I have something related to that in that a literary agent confided in us and told us that Big House, who we shall remain unnamed, basically said, we don't want to see any more diverse titles or diverse authors. Do not bring them to us. We don't even want to consider them. So for me, who always is looking at the diverse children's book space, on a whole, let's say if all of the big houses are communicating this to all the literary agents, what you're going to see is a receding, of diverse books in a couple of years, basically, and that will be a shrinkage of the number of diverse books published, which is interesting because, before this administration came to power, really, and I think everyone here can sort of back me up, is that there was a great demand for diverse books, especially after George Floyd and things like that, so what you're seeing is almost like an artificial obstacle being put in the way of what consumers actually need and want, which to me has never happened before in all the years that we've been publishing. I mean, Wade and Cheryl and I were discussing the other day that we've never had the federal government act, directly in opposition of us before. We've never seen this before. And so this is a completely different ball game.
And it's not like the population has gotten less diverse. I mean, they're trying to
Well,
shut people out, but like,
I think that's
exactly going the opposite way. Yeah.
That's one of the problems. I think the other impact, I know Cheryl wants to share about her school invites being canceled, but I want to make this point sort of adding to what Jason is saying. I think the other impact is that writers, particularly writers of color, who are looking to get published, will stop writing manuscripts that they feel will not get acquired because they want to have a career. And so they're going to start doing writing manuscripts that won't be challenged, and so it's sort of a soft kind of impact, but it's an impact, and because I'm starting to look at the kind of books that are coming out and have been acquired over the last year, there are fewer books, particularly dealing with Black history, Black culture, and Black experiences.
But if any writers or aspiring writers are watching this, I do want to just say that, like, it's still really important to write what your heart wants you to write, and it's not going to be like, I keep thinking of Chimamanda Adichie in that amazing TED talk about like the power of the danger of a single story, and how the first books she wrote were about like children marveling at the snow, and she's like, I've never seen snow, I didn't know what it was, but all the children's books I was raised on were these books that were imported from England and stuff. And so but Antonio, the book, and all three of you have books in the We Are Stronger Than Censorship program, which we'll touch on a little later. But Antonio, the book that you all have in the program, Darcy Little Badger's A Snake Falls to Earth, that book has been challenged not because of the content of the book, but because of who the author identifies as, correct?
Yes, so Darcy Little Badger is a Lipan Apache writer based in Texas and California, and identifies as asexual, and married her partner Taryn a couple of years ago. There's nothing in the book talks about asexuality or sexuality at all, to be honest. Nothing really in the book mentions Darcy's identity in any real way, except there is a Lipan main character. But the books do get challenged or put on lists because Darcy is such an advocate for ace representation. And so I think that's why a book like Snakes Falls to Earth, which was a Newbery honor book, gets put on a challenge list because the author may be seen as too political.
It's just makes your head want to explode.
It's dangerous stuff. It's dangerous.
Madeline
Well,
Kahn's flames.
Well,
Yeah, I mean, just to add to that, though, what Antonio was saying, I mean, in terms of like over the years when we've been publishing, a few times we've broken new ground, and we actually published the first trans picture book called Aiden Became a Brother by Kyle Lukoff. And unfortunately, or fortunately, I mean, the book did really, really well, and then until it didn't. And the thing is, it's probably one of the most challenged or banned books, in the US at this point. And it's a shame. It was Kyle's first book, and he went on to win, many of the big awards. And the guy he's a warrior. He's a social justice warrior. But I mean, when I talk to him, he's just, it's hard, when what you are, who you are is being attacked on that level, it's incredibly hard to watch, and it's a beautiful book. It's a beautiful book just about a family, it really is. Yeah.
What we're talking about here, I think, is number one, freedom, the First Amendment and freedom of the press. I think it was A.J. Liebling, who was a journalist during the 60s for the New Yorker, who wrote that freedom of the press is guaranteed only to those who own one, which is kind of it's a double entendre, two-sided sword thing. I mean, the institutions of media and places, publishing companies, television stations, all of that really have so much to do with what you can read, hear, see, or believe. So what we're really talking about is a challenge to the First Amendment and the Fourth Estate in terms of being independent publishers. That's true. We can publish what we want, but that doesn't mean that people are going to have access to it, or the media is going to support it through reviews, or that television will have us on banned book club with Belchy. And so, I mean, the main thing that we're talking about here is this whole assault on the First Amendment and people's freedom to access and be a part of and exercise the First Amendment and the Bill of Rights and the whole Constitution, which reflects on publishing. So it's all a part of a big bag. I mean,
absolutely.
Part of my experience having one book that I recently wrote was being denied access after having been invited to a school. They kind of found reasons, well, we're not getting back to you, or maybe it's another time. But a book being banned, not because of the content or the actual content, but a supposed perceived content, that it was too religious in nature. Didn't have to do with Black history per se or the subject matter.
It was too Protestant rather than.
Yeah. So it's just a very dangerous ground that we're talking about, and the government, as Jason and Wade said, the government getting into telling you what you can read, what you can after it's been published.
Yeah, I think too. I know before Donald Trump was elected, this was like what, 3-4 years ago, Cheryl. We were promoting the anthology "We Rise, We Resist, We Raise Our Voices." And we were in North Carolina doing several school visits. And one school had invited us. And when we got to the school that morning, the principal said, I need to talk with you, the two of you. And so we went into the office. And she said that a group of parents had challenged our appearance there and did not want us to come and to speak to the students. This was in
2019.
2019. And I'm assuming there were probably a small group of white parents who challenged our visit there. And the principal said that because of the uproar, she was really planning to cancel. And she said something said not to do it, not to cancel. So she went ahead with it, and she gave the parents the option of not bringing their kids to school that day. And so we went ahead and we spoke to the students, and it went extremely well. The principal said, "I'm so happy that I did not cancel you guys because you were such an inspiration to the kids." So I'm bringing that up because the government obviously is doing what it's doing, but this organized effort to ban books has been going on for some years now. And there's a lot of money behind it, and it's well organized. And now, since the government has started to really uh, push this assault forward, it's really challenging for us. It really is a big challenge for us.
So let's segue into what are you all doing sort of like in response? Like, are you looking for other ways to get your books out there? I know that, you know, all three of your companies are part of We Are Stronger Than Censorship, and that's the T-shirt I'm wearing, just to explain to people. Strong Like a Reader. Every shirt includes a $16 donation to buy 2 books to offset 1 book challenge, and so far we've offset 1,250 book challenges by being able to buy and donate 2,500 books. We'd love to do more. There'll be a link in the show notes. I'm curious, like, you know, you have your missions. How are you feeling like you're responding as publishers to what's going on? Is it just like publishing in the storm, like the name of this session? Like, you're just going to keep doing what you do so well? Has it changed how you do certain things? Any order, just go for it.
Uh, Antonio, you go. Yeah. No, you go.
Well, what I was going to say is that I think from a I work in marketing. And so from a marketing standpoint, I think we're just pivot our messaging a little bit. For instance, if the word diversity is seen as a complicated word that can't be used, then I start to use inclusive. I start to use words that maybe aren't being as challenged as much. But even though it is technically part of DEI, when you're saying the word inclusive, it's really hard to argue with that. So I adjust my marketing language. Another thing that we do to adjust is that we start talking about like things in our books that have nothing to do with identity, but are still related to identity in a lot of ways. So, you know, I talk about like sibling stories. I talk about you know, different kinds of families. So like in a way that like I circumvent the argument that says that I can't talk about diversity. And there has been pushback. There are some conservative activists who are anti-empathy. You can't say empathy because that is a trigger word for DEI. And so, like, you know, I talk about social emotional learning sometimes as a way to get around people who are going to not be able to hear my message, or feel like that maybe our books can't be brought into their collection. So there's a lot of different things that we do on our side to adjust the language that we use and how we talk about and market our books, so that there are broader audiences that can be brought in.
And are you doing that because you're trying to, I mean, the people that think that empathy is a bad word are not the audience for your books.
Exactly.
So, but you're concerned that they may be the gatekeepers that prevent your book from getting to the audience, and that's why you're adjusting the we
adjust the messaging because we want to be able to give those gatekeepers language that they can use to protect themselves when someone is coming after them saying that this book is DEI and can't be included in the curriculum. And also you adjust the language so that more people can hear what you're saying, you know, and be brought into the circle.
I love circles.
Yeah.
And also to remind people that the books aren't just about one thing. Like all of these books that we publish across the board from Jason and Cheryl, all of you all know that like these books are intersectional. They are bringing in different ways that people identify. It's not just one way, to your point about the single story. And so sometimes I just remind people, and I'm talking to a media outlet who maybe doesn't want to be, is afraid of certain words or language or specific topics. I'll adjust how I pitch that story and how I present it to them.
Thank you. Jason, where did you want
No, I mean, I'll just echo Antonio. It's our strategies are similar. Essentially, you're de-emphasizing diversity and essentially moving up a lot of the thematic things that books are about, and emphasizing those things. I mean, we've been around for a long time. We've had to do this before. We call it getting diversity in the back door, basically. But it's something that sometimes needs to happen, because the main thing is selling these books, and I'm not going to die on some hill because the terminology isn't correct, so I think that one has to figure out what is important at this point. The other thing that I want to say is that in what we can do as a publisher, I mean, I feel that it's important as a publisher and a citizen to just educate yourself. I mean, I've read books on all different subjects to sort of get more knowledgeable about what's happening in our country. So I've read books on the mathematics behind voting, about autocracies, books on this country's history, about the Constitution, and I think that these books that I'm reading are help me to understand what the situation is and what we're facing, but it also helps me to cope, to not freak out, because I think knowledge has like a stabilizing type of effect on people, when you understand what's happening and not being going, why is this happening, all the time. So and also gives me sort of ideas on ways to help. So one of the ideas we came up recently was that we're going to be sending out royalty statements to our creators at the end of this month, right? So what we've included is some action steps for them to take in terms of writing their elected officials, because some of the old ways are still can work, depending on what state you're in. Because really the only battles that we can win right now are kind of on a state level, and so for me, through my reading, I found out that there are 10 states in this country that have banned book bans, right? However, New York State, which is the home of publishing, does not have one of these laws in place right now. So I've been sort of trying to rally at least our creators to write those letters to the governor and have, her basically have hundreds of letters appear to get that over the finish line, because I checked it, it's actually Assembly Bill A7878. And essentially it's right at the point of going to her desk. But a lot of times what happens is that it can pass a lot of that sort of state legislature, and then the governor rejects it for whatever reason. So I think it's very important for her to hear from her constituents that we want this passed, to protect, people's rights to buy the books that they want. And from the librarians that I've spoken to, it matters very much to have a law in place on the books backing them up, because they're the frontline people who are defending books, on a day in and day out basis, and they need that type of protection, that those teeth, to fight this fight, to continue to fight this fight. So that's sort of one little, germ of an idea in terms of like activism that like, big, medium, small publishers could do en masse, and that would make a big difference.
I love that. And if you're watching this and you live in New York, send a letter to the governor.
What we've been doing at Just Us Books is looking at alternative ways of getting these books to people. When we first started our company, we really were not a part of the publishing eco distribution system that we are now. So we really had to take our books to the people. We partnered with fraternities, sororities, church groups, many different organizations in the community. So we're going back to that model. In fact, I just recently put together a proposal for establishing a book fair that an organization could actually do. It includes partnering with local bookstores or a local bookstore library in that particular area, other organizations that may be of interest in combating this. And Cheryl might can add to this, but we're also developing a book ban pledge. And what that pledge does, it gives you people, anyone, things that they can do to make a difference. And we're going to release that probably next week. Yeah.
Banned
Yeah.
Book Week.
Yeah.
Right.
So I think for us is getting the books to the people, and that way it gives us an opportunity to bypass the gatekeepers. Now we still are, we're a member of a number of organizations that are fighting the fight to push against banned books. Some court actions as well that we've been a partner of with groups. But I think the most important thing is to find alternative ways to get these books to people, and there are ways that can be utilized. I mean, back in the day, we used to call it guerrilla marketing.
Yeah, I remember that.
Well, I love the idea, and I want to share one thing that we did that was really exciting and really effective. And it's exactly what we were just talking about now. It's that, and I love the idea. I would love to partner with the Panhellenic Greek Society. Like if we could get those groups on those university campuses to help us to get young kids or teenagers even to read and adopt books, like that would be incredible.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, the fraternities and sororities that we are dealing with are Black, right? Obviously, there are others. So,
Yeah.
and we have friends who are members of these sororities and fraternities. So we pitch it out there to them, and then they then pitch it to their
The
chapter,
National
to
Council.
the national.
Yeah.
So if you can get like a group, a sorority like the Delta Sigma Theta, for example, they have probably hundreds of chapters around the country in different cities. If you can get an organization like that to buy into doing a book fair on a national scale, that can make a major difference in getting books into the hands, because they're getting books in the hands of directly to people, and they can promote it, partner, as I said, with other groups in the community. And that can really be a major way to push back against it.
That's really
I
cool.
agree completely.
Antonio, did you have one other point you wanted to make before we go to the next? We only have 5 minutes
Oh,
left.
okay. So the quick point that I wanted to make is that to the point we were just making now, which is that we partnered, a way that we found to get, we had a book by a trans writer that it features a trans character, and the book is all, it's an incredible YA novel. And so what happened was the editor found a way to partner with independent bookstores across our region. And so what we did is that we worked with the store, and we said, can we put up this signage in your store, like near the cashier, that says, if you can buy, as you're checking out your books, you can buy this book, and LQ will donate that book to a trans youth organization. And so we partnered with various organizations across the country. They're usually connected to the local area where the bookstore is. And so that we were able to sell so many copies that book hit the New York Times bestseller list.
Wow.
Because what happened was that you felt like, I can buy this book for a trans child or an LGBTQ child or organization that needs it and wants to get access to this book, and they'll have it for free. And so it was just a way that we felt like we were able to tap into people's a desire to want to support our mission and what we're doing, and still make that book successful and hit the bestseller list.
I love that story. That's
That's
great.
awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, two quick lightning rounds for people watching this. If they can, what's the one thing that you would suggest they do to help fight for the freedom to read? Jason, then Wade and Cheryl, then Antonio.
One thing?
Well, the thing to start with. They're going to do more, but the thing to start with, it should be.
Could someone else go first? I had to get my head
I'll
around
go
this.
first. One thing is to buy our books. Part of the pledge is buy books from independent publishers. We are really ones who start trends, and the major publishers pick up on them, as they did with diversity. You know, people weren't publishing, the major publishers weren't doing it. We started it, they picked up on it. So, but buy from independent publishers, buy directly from the publisher if you can. And also, I like Antonio's idea of buying a book for someone in an organization and donating that book to that organization for free so that someone can have access to it. That's a way of supporting the missions that we all represent.
And also educate yourself, like I like what Jason said earlier, so you would understand really what's going on, and you will not fall victim to the narratives that are out there.
And then Antonio.
Oh, I have so many things that people could do, but I'm trying to think of one thing.
One
And
to
I think
start with.
the number one thing I think that people can do that takes almost no work at all is to talk about the books with their friends. Literally, you can follow people on social media, it costs nothing. Subscribe to newsletters, it costs nothing. But really, word of mouth is what moves the needle in book publishing. So the number one thing you can do is read inclusive books, go to your library, check them out, cost you nothing to get them from the library, and talk about them, because that is the thing that's going to really make a huge difference in the conversations that you're having, in the life of that author, and in the life of that publisher.
Awesome. Jason?
All right. So, I've had some time to think about this, right? I mean, the thing is, I can echo both of what and agree with what everyone else has said already. I mean, the thing is, like, I can't help but underline sort of what Cheryl was saying in terms of buying independent, you know, because I mean, it just to sort of, you know, emphasize this, it keeps the lights on, it pays our creators, it gives us the resources to keep in this fight, you know. The other thing that is a little more out there, but I'm going to throw it out there anyway, is that that don't be lulled into a sense of that I hope that it gets better, you know, because you know, Hope didn't put diverse children's books out there. Real work did, okay? And the thing is, you know, the small acts of basically paying attention to what's going on and being involved can move the needle, you know. And also, I have a problem with the word hope, you know, in general, because I mean, it's been so diluted and messed with, like over the years, that it almost is meaningless, you know. And just to give an example of that, you know, when we have an all too common mass shooting, what is the first thing that politicians ask people to do is, well, please, you know, hopes and prayers, which basically is a substitution for doing nothing, right? So I think that getting away from, you know, the hopes and prayers sort of ideology is really about being more active, you know, doing the small things, buying the books for one, talking about them the next, but also as a citizen, even outside of our day jobs as publishers, be involved. You know, the midterm elections is literally 1 year away, you know. We have to be involved to make sure that we have a free and fair election. You know, and this may have nothing to do with books, but it has everything to do with this country. This country is in trouble, you know, and one, you know, social justice warrior that I really admire, and she's not talking about sort of the country itself, but she's talking about the climate, is Greta Thunberg, you know, and what she says about hope is that she doesn't want your hope. She basically wants you to treat this like the crisis that it is, and that your house is on fire, and basically, do something about it that is relative to what a real crisis is, and we are in a crisis right now. We have to act as publishers, but as citizens as well. We have to do double the work, and it really matters.
Yeah, I think we
Okay.
have to really focus on helping to provide tools for people to fight back. I think there are more people who are willing to fight back, but what I get in the community is, what can I do? What can I do? So I think the more tools we give them to use to fight back, the better equipped they will be to fight the battle. But you're right, this is a crisis, Jason. We are in a crisis.
Books are great tools for fighting back.
And good books, the books that we do and that we
Make a
publish
difference.
make a difference.
All right, final
It's
question.
a difference between propaganda and pablum and real authentic content,
Yeah,
information,
Yeah.
truth.
absolutely.
Absolutely. So I won't say hope, Jason, because that was the original structure of the question. But in this storm, where do you see the rainbow? Where do you see the sunshine? Where do you see optimism in this moment? And let's go with Antonio and then Jason, and we'll end with Cheryl and Wade.
Wait, Lee, ask the question again, because I want to make sure that I get into the root of what you're asking.
What's giving you hope or a sense of optimism in this moment, despite the storm, if there's something?
I think the thing that gives me the most hope is just the resilience that I'm seeing in a lot of the writers that I follow, the publishers that I'm listening to, and some of the media folks that I just pay attention to. People standing up and not accepting the status quo, I think, has been a really optimistic thing for me. Realizing that we are the voice of reason is the larger voice, and that this group is the people that are attacking children's books and attacking the work that we do are a very small minority. They're vocal and they're connected to, and they're very organized. So I think that for me, it gives me hope, realizing that there are more people on the right side of history, and there are more people who are pushing back every day and who are taking actions in their everyday life to just make sure that children are able to have access to read.
Thank you. Jason, what about you? Where are you finding optimism in these moments?
I mean, I guess it's sort of like when I even look outside of publishing, and I see people canceling their Disney Hulu accounts, because of Jimmy Kimmel, being, sort of put to the side, and then him being reinstated less than a week later because of that type of activism. For me, as I said before, hope doesn't motivate me really like results do, and I think that, like, rather than hope, I think that optimism really can be created by, as I said before, really doing your homework and understanding what's going on. A lot of clarifying things happened for me, when I got a hold of the Moms for Liberty toolkit, and then also when I read the education section of the Project 2025 document. And I noticed that what they were doing was quite clever, because they were really kind of co-opting a lot of our inclusive language and bending it to sort of really get diverse books, out of the mainstream, out of educational settings. So for me, it's like having that knowledge is important because you realize kind of what you're going against. So my optimism sort of lies in just understanding what we're up against, and being able to sort of work ways that are going to matter, that are going to bend and move that needle, toward, where we need it to be rather than where they want it to go.
Excellent. Cheryl, Wade, what about you? Where are you finding optimism?
I guess I find optimism in the fact that we still have access to social media and other ways of communicating other than necessarily mainstream media outlets, that there are lots of places online and offline in groups, younger people who are committed to the First Amendment and to the values of our Constitution, which again, that's behind all of this, and their wits to access that. And I'm just trying to find ways to connect with those people who have some of those tools. And I'm agreeing with Jason too, in terms of the educating yourself, being a part, get a library card, take your kids to the library, read with your kids, small things, and talk with kids about your books. And adults, read those books that some of Moms for Liberty and these other people are writing critiques about, when they have not actually read the books to know anything about what the content is.
For me, my optimism comes from the struggles that have taken place before. I grew up, and Cheryl and I grew up during the 60s, and we've seen a number of struggles, and people stood up and pushed back. And because they did, progress was made. We certainly have a long way to go. But I think there's a term that we used to use during the 60s and the 70s, the struggle continues. I don't think you can ever rest on where you are. You have to remain vigilant, determined, and keep pushing for additional progress, even as you achieve progress, because at some point, there will be the backlash, and that's an American tradition, to be honest about it, historically.
Voting rights.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah. I am optimistic because I do believe, as Antonio said, there are more good people than there are bad people. We just need to make sure that we are providing them with the tools, the motivation, the inspiration, and the necessity to confront this evil, so that we can move forward and keep building a country that's moving toward a more perfect union. If it never ever is possible, we can still move it further through progress. So that is what keeps me going, because 10, 15 years from now, we may have confronted this struggle and maybe, made some progress, but there will be another one, and that's the reality. You have to remain vigilant, determined, and keep pushing the needle.
Thank you all so much. I will share that what gives me optimism is that Lee and Low and Levine Querido and Just Us Books continue to publish beautiful books for your missions, for all those readers that are so moved and touched by having books that both reflect them and the diversity of the world. Yes, I use the word diversity. The diversity of the world that we all live in.
Lee, don't do that.
I love that word. I'm so grateful for the books of all of your companies. I'm a big fan, and I'm very grateful for Free Library Institute giving us the opportunity to come together during Banned Books Week, when this will be released, the recording, and read a good book, and read a book by one of these publishers, and spread the word. All right, everybody, for watching. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.